This episode of the Golf Gambling Podcast and the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Sign up today with promo code GOLFSGPN to claim your first-time deposit offer up to $250 of bonus cash. UnderdogFantasy.com, promo code GOLFSGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Rhythm's college football and NFL projections are now live. Claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. All right, DGens, welcome back to the Golf Gambling Podcast. If you are hearing me doing the ad reads at the top of the show, I am doing it solo, and I'm actually recording this late on Sunday night. I was going to get up early on Monday to record this. My weekend kind of just got away from me. I ended up doing all my prep tonight, but I got done with a lot quicker than I anticipated, and maybe I was inspired by Matt Kuchar deciding that he wanted to protect his T12 finish at the Wyndham, despite the fact that the tournament's over. Aaron Rai won, but he wants to show up tomorrow to finish his tournament. So I didn't feel like actually getting up tomorrow morning and doing it. I had the opportunity to do it tonight, so I decided to just bang out this recording tonight. As far as the Wyndham goes, a pretty wild tournament. Typically the Wyndham does produce some pretty entertaining tournaments. It was kind of a sleeper through the most part, I would say, throughout mostly the tournament until poor Max Greyersman ends up making a quad and three putting from 3 feet. Someone please clip me doing a cold take expose about Aaron Rai's performance on Bermuda, even though it is true. By the way, look at his Southeast record. It has not been all that good, but he was a very fine pick this week. Obviously, trending iron play, trending putting. That has been a good success at this tournament. I just assumed, falsely, that he just wasn't very good on Bermuda, and it came back to bite me. So I apologize for that take. Is what it is. He was the most tipped golfer of the week, and again, it took a quad and 3 putting from 3 feet to give him the win. And he even wasn't all that good coming down the stretch anyways. He had the opportunity to kind of grab the tournament by the balls. Did finally on 18, but, did kind of Aaron Rai things. But hey, the win was handed to him on a silver platter. So congratulations to, seems like everybody in the golf gambling community that had him. I did not. Say la vie is what it is. So we will move on now to the FedEx St. Jude Championship. It is the first leg of the playoffs, and how long have I been doing this show? 7 years now? No, not 7 years. I've been writing for Sports Gambling Podcast for 7 years. I'm doing the show for now 4 years. We're right around our 4th anniversary. I think actually the 2020 Wyndham was our first tournament we ever covered for this little podcast we have. And you guys know my feelings about the FedEx Cup. You guys know how I would want to change it. I'm not going to rant about it. I've ranted a lot about TPC Southwind. And you know what? There are some things I do regret saying about this place. I kind of get caught up with, because it is very in vogue to bash this place. And there's reason to bash it from a golf course perspective. It just, this is supposed to be the playoffs, your season-ending race to your championship, and you're deciding to start it in Memphis, and it's all because of FedEx. It's the only reason why they're here, and there really isn't another golf course in Memphis that can hold this place, so they just have it here. And FedEx, really kind of budged their way into the playoffs. This thing used to take place at TPC Boston and New York and all these really good venues with a lot of great fans. And obviously there's great fans in Memphis too, but there's a lot of great golf courses in all those areas as well. And, FedEx just got their way because, they were, for a long time, they were the sponsor for the FedEx St. Jude Classic, which was the week before the US Open, and drew a very terrible field. And because they give so much money to this playoff event and so much money to the PGA Tour, they wanted a premier event. They wanted Rory McIlroy to show up. They wanted all the best players. So they ended up getting awarded WGC, taken away from Bridgestone. And then when COVID officially killed Bridgestone, it killed the WGCs, except for the match play, which the PGA Tour then just ended up just killing. It decided that it was going to be the first leg of the FedEx Cup playoffs. So every August we go to Memphis because of that. And, I think that's probably why there's just a little bit of lackadaisical attitude about this tournament, a little bit of eye roll. But listen, it's a fine golf course. I mean, if you've ever heard anybody use the word fine, like a significant other, you know what fine means in that respect. It's fine. It has its challenges. I'll go through some of the holes. There's a lot of car wrecks that can happen, but it's a pretty no nonsense golf course. It's a target golf course, plotting, positional, less than driver, although guys have been a little more aggressive at this place in recent years. I'll go over that in a little bit. But, we have had some really good finishes at this tournament. Last year ended in a playoff. The year before that, we had Will Zalatoris and Sepp Straka again in a playoff. A lot of shenanigans went on the 11th hole. The year before that, playoff. So if you want to bet playoff this week at a plus odds, you probably could do that. There's been a lot of dramatic moments down the stretch of guys just completely blowing it. I had Bryson, I think, a couple years ago, and he was tied for the lead and just imploded down the back nine. Same thing with Harris English, poor guy. Ended up being a three-way playoff between Burns and Hideki and Abe Answer. So, I mean, this tournament definitely this golf course can breed some entertaining tournaments. But, I just think people are just kind of fatigued with the FedEx Cup. I don't think anybody likes it. I know no one likes it. I know my co-host hates it. It is what it is. So at least it is, a little more exclusive than what it was. It's now top 70. No cut, though. That's kind of bad, but is what it is. So after we take, a short little break here, we will fire up Google Earth, and I will take over some of the holes. I'll give you a flavor of what TPC Southwind brings to the table, how it's going to challenge these guys, how they play it. We'll go from there. So, not only are you listening to a fantastic podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, there are a lot of great shows and content on this network, including the Sports Gambling Podcast has launched their 32 NFL team previews. They've been great. I've listened to the Giants preview podcast a couple times, agreed with most of it, disagreed on a couple other things, but overall, we're pretty much on the same page. Obviously, I enjoyed Boston Capper on the New England Patriots podcast, just completely crapping on his own team. So that's been great. And they're also giving out a $500 Circa Future for listeners with their secret code game there. Basically, you got to listen to, they give it a code word every single episode. And if you get all 32, they'll give you a $500 voucher for a NFL future. If you get it all right. So definitely go listen to all those. Also, there's the EPL is going to come back. So the Soccer Gambling Podcast and the EPL Gambling Podcast are definitely there to give you your footy fix. So, and there's a lot of other great shows. The NASCAR race tonight had a very wild ending. I'm sure the NASCAR podcast is going to talk about that ending in their race recap. So subscribe to all those podcasts wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple, wherever. Also, you can download it on the SGPN app. So go do that. Download all the our shows today. All right. Hopefully, this is going to work. I made some adjustments to my internet. I do think, though, thank you for people who have been patient the last couple weeks with us. I think just StreamYard just doesn't like Google Earth. And maybe that I might have just mothball this thing because I've done speed test speed. I actually pay more for it. And right now it's buffering on its own. So this might have to go away, unfortunately. But we'll see. Maybe I'll read this in the off season. There's some other ways I can show you the golf course that is not this. But we'll see what happens. So this is TPC Southwind. Actually, I'll scroll out, really quick. So it was built in 1980 of TPC Southwind before, where it hosted the FedEx St. Jude Classic for years and hosted the WGC FedEx St. Jude Championship. And now just hosts the FedEx St. Jude Championship as the first leg of. I'll try and be quick with the Google Earth because it's clearly not liking what is happening right now on the stream with this. But, you'll hear all week about how penal this place is. And that's true. I think you need to focus on why it's exactly penal. I think people are just going to assume that it's really penal off the tee, which isn't totally the case. It kind of is, but very positional golf. I mean, just looking at this first hole right here, a lot of holes are like this. Shorter par four. There's a couple longer ones, but this is a short par four first. 434 yards, dog leg left here. Very narrow fairway, only about 30 on the dog leg here. There are some water hazards, a little short, but none of these guys are actually going to be in these water hazards. This is just, I mean, you maybe might see a guy try and take it over the corner here with a driver, but most guys, the strategy is hit in the middle of the dog leg with a 3-wood into the green. These greens are very small, by the way. I'll get to the GCS A report in a little bit, but only average about 4,300 square feet in square area. So very small targets. That helps drive down the regulation rate here. But, a lot of the holes like you see on the first hole here is basically what you get at TPC Southwind over and over and over. Southwind is the fact that it just plays up through an office park. Here's an example right here. Second hole. If you are a person who's lucky enough to work in one of these offices over here during the tournament, you can actually watch the golfers go by. They play at the second and the third play along some office parks. And then back all the way down here, there's a lot of office parks. I think this is actually the FedEx distribution center right here. So that makes sense why they would want to hear, because one of their major distribution centers is right there. What I want to talk about there's a significant penalty for missed fairways, but I think people assume that there's a lot of penalties that are incurred on the tee shots. The thing is, most of the water on this golf course is actually comes into play with the approach shots. So here's an example right here on the third hole, par 5, 554. If you're in that, it's hard to hit the green in 2, but the water comes into play right next to the green. Same thing on the par 3, fourth right here. Water next to the green over here. On the 9th, green is short of the green. It's here. So if you come up short, you're going to end up there. You're not going to end up really in the water off the tee. It's 350 to this water hazard. You're not getting it there unless it's really firm. You decide to hit driver, and you're basically an idiot on this one. Here, technically, water comes into play. But again, if you're just a complete moron and pull driver, you're going to avoid the water. You're going to come way short of it, but it kind of comes into play a little bit around the green. The 11th hole, though, this is one you're going to see. This has the most water balls of any hole, and this can be a very wild hole, especially when the wind is up. Guys have a lot of trouble judging where the wind's coming from. If the wind is in their face, way short. Straka right here, and all Sepp Straka really needed to do was just hit it on the green to win the tournament, and he dumped in the water. So the wind can fool these guys. It's a small green. There's a lot of, there's some small bunkers here. Back plugged. So a lot of big numbers can come on the 11th hole. Same thing on the 12th hole. This is an example where water does come on to play off the tee, and you just have to hit driver, and you got to hit a good shot here. But water is all the way down the right side of the hole here. And then we go across the street. We have a long par 3, 14, 240 yards. 15th hole here. I remember a couple years ago that Justin Thomas, he was trying to hold on to the lead here, ends up hitting a rope hook 3-wood, but it hits the bridge. Gets really lucky, ends up getting onto the green in 2. Very lucky, but the optimal play is just hit it through the chute, set up a wedge into the green. But, I forget which hole at Murfield Village, but a little stream in front. Kind of reminds me of that hole. And then the 18th here. This is a tough closing hole 453 yards, sharp leg left here, 90. If the par 5 18th at Wiley had a water hazard, kind of looks like that, because if you run the ball through the fairway here, there's these bunkers. There's also pretty deep Bermuda rough over here. Makes it really difficult to get to the green. And you got water greenside as well over here. You see a lot of guys just overcook their drives, put in the water. You see guys even try and carry the water. They get a little too far. They, put a little too far left, doesn't carry. So again, a lot of big numbers can be made here. But, overall, although this is a golf course that is right on you. And if you just pretty easily, especially because, and I'm going to get rid of this now because this is ridiculous at this point. Let's get rid of Google Earth. Okay. This is a golf course that's, if you're just careful and plodding your way around, you're going to do fine. Especially because, if you look at the scoring averages over the last few years, as better fields has taken on this golf course, scoring's gone down. This actually used to be one of the harder golf courses, at least, relative to par on the PGA Tour. Now, part of that might be just because it was played in June. Now playing in August, a little softer, a little soupier. So part of that might be it. But, the FedEx St. Jude Classic had a very weak field. So worse golfers are playing it. Guys are probably more apt to put in water, or they're not as good iron players. So, they're more apt to rack up penalty strokes. But you put better players here, and the modern professional, they just hit the ball so far and straight now. It's not as challenging as what it used to be. Yes, if you are really sloppy here, you're going to put up really big numbers, but it's the winning score is never really out of control, but I think guys definitely have a much easier time getting around this than they used to. It's not a birdie fest, but it's not as much car crash city as it used to be when they had weaker fields. These guys are just so good now. They can kind of tame this place, but you still got to be careful. Still got to execute. It's not as difficult as what it appears, especially with all the water. If you're just a really good iron player, really accurate, keeping the fairway, you're going to do fine at this place. So why don't we take another break, and then we will go over the GCSAA report, go over DataGolf, show you some things that you need to look out for betting this tournament. So we are brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, and if you can go 8-0 on your Underdog Pick'em entry, you can win up to 325 times your entry. And right now, fantasy football is starting to heat up, and you can play best ball over at Underdog. And Best Ball Mania is live with $15 million in prizes. And Underdog just launched their season-long college football projections. You can pick higher or lower for your favorite college football players. And you can also use specials and boosts on all flex entries. So you can go do that. Also, it's a great place to play, entries for golf. One thing I wish maybe they could do, if they're listening, how about some higher lowers on water balls on some players this week? That'd be pretty fun. So I know some props sometimes offer those. Maybe Underdog can offer over under half a water hazard found for some of these guys. You can definitely root for chaos at this point if that happens. So do that. Go sign up today at Underdog Fantasy with promo code GOLFSGPN to claim your special pick plus first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. UnderdogFantasy.com, promo code GOLFSGPN. Okay. Go over the GCSAA report. This is last year's. I don't know what's happened to them, but they didn't come out with anything with a Wyndham last week. Haven't seen anything for this tournament. I'm hoping the guy's just on vacation, didn't decide to just stop doing it because these are very useful. But I went and looked, and there's no changes to the golf course this year. Now, there will be changes next year to TPC Southwind. They're actually doing a renovation. They're going to rebuild and resod all the greens here. They're going to rebuild the tee boxes, add an irrigation system. Not really probably going to do anything to the actual routing. It's not a major renovation. But something to keep in mind next year that the greens are going to be pretty mega firm because they're going to be all new greens. So put a little bookmark into that for next year. But we can still refer to last year's GCSAA report for just general course stuff for this place. So once, like I mentioned, this was built in 1980 by Ron Pritchard with consultation by Fuzzy Zeller. I forgot to mention that earlier. Average green size, like I mentioned, 4,300 square feet in area. That is really small. That keeps the green regulation rate down at this place because it's really small targets. Guys don't hit fairways a ton at this place. It's only about 60%. It's lower than PG Tour average, slightly lower than that. So, with the small green sizes, small targets, makes it kind of a challenge here. A lot of water headers. There's 11 holes of water in play. Most of it, though, comes with the approach shots. Like I mentioned, I showed you a couple of holes where most of the water is actually around the green. It's not really off the tee. There's a couple holes where, 12 most likely, or 12 and 18, where water is definitely in play. You got to hit driver there. You got to hit a really good tee shot. But overall, though, with most of the other par 4s and 5s here, it's just hit straight, hit the fairway, and then where it makes you a little uncomfortable would be with the approach shot because that's where the water is. Agronomy, though. So once again, we're going to Champion Bermuda greens. That is the exact same agronomy that we just saw with the Wyndham Championship. Makes sense that Lucas Glover got a very hot putter last year on Champion Bermuda and then carried it the following week on the same turf. So, maybe if there's some guys that played Sedgefield putt pretty well last week on those greens, maybe that'll translate to next week. Now, the greens at Sedgefield are definitely a lot more difficult. Maybe not this year because it played so soft, but they're traditionally more difficult than they are at TPC Southwind. We'll talk about that in a little bit when we talk about putting stats and what usually works here. But other golf courses, they use Champion Bermuda on their greens. I just mentioned Sedgefield, Eastlake Golf Club, the Dunes Golf and Beach Club for the Myrtle Beach Classic, Pinehurst number 2. Wouldn't refer to that, though. Those greens are very crispy and, they have the turtleback roll-offs. Probably not a great one to look at, but and then the Country Club of Jackson. Those all use Champion Bermuda. So if you really want to get fine-tuned under Bermuda, go use those golf courses. Otherwise, though, probably just consult your general Bermuda stats. You'll probably do okay. The one key difference, though, between last week and this week, though, is while there is Bermuda rough, 2.5 inches, just like at Sedgefield, the fairways are different. These are zoysia grass fairways, and that does make it a little easier to hit approach shots at this golf course because the ball sits up really nicely on zoysia. It's like hitting off a driving range mat. And some guys like it, though. Some guys don't, but it's really easy to hit good approach shots off of zoysia. So, and if you get a really good iron player that is on top of their game, they can definitely take advantage of these conditions if they keep the ball in the fairway. Otherwise, though, hitting out of Bermuda rough is never easy. You saw this week, even though it's 2.5 inches of Sedgefield, ball just sink right to the bottom. Same thing at this place. You can get horrible lies here. So you best avoid the zoysia or the Bermuda rough this week. Okay. Let's start going over what makes this place difficult or easy. And for the most part, though, it's kind of middle of the road for difficulty. Especially with the last couple of years with some of the better players kind of just bringing this course, not necessarily to their knees, but showing that this has less teeth than what it appears like. Yes, there's a lot of water. There's a lot of ways to just completely screw up here. But if you just are playing smart and executing and hitting the ball solid, you're going to avoid all those areas. It's not as difficult as what you think. So, let's first start with the tee shots here. So since 2015 is the 46th most difficult off the tee out of 93 golf courses. So average is the average PGA Tour average difficult golf course off the tee. Now, obviously, narrow fairways, that makes it very difficult to, hit fairways here, makes, ups the difficulty there. There's some holes with water on it. Yes, but like I just mentioned, though, like I showed you, there are a lot of holes where it is less than driver. You're just trying to hit the middle of the fairway, and the actual degree of difficulty of that is not that extreme. A lot of these guys can kind of just take care of that. So as far as actual driving stats, though, so let's talk about driving distance first. So the average distance is since 2015 is 289.7, but you can see, though, last couple of years, The average driving distance has gone up a lot. It started at 288. Now it's about 291, 290. So obviously guys are longer than what they used to be, but I think some guys are being a little more aggressive at this place as well because, the ball has never gone as farther and straighter this place. So maybe you'll see a little bit different tactic this place. I misspoke earlier. It is not a 60% driving accuracy rate. That's actually, I think the green regulation rate is 56%. That is well below PG Tour average. 27th out of 93 as far as fewest fairways hit. So really narrow fairways here. It definitely can make it a little bit more trouble. As far as the missed fairway penalty, there is a pretty high penalty for missing fairways. It's the average score difference between missing a fairway and hitting a fairway is 0.43 strokes. Similar to last week at Sedgefield. If you're hitting it from the fairway, approach shots are relatively easy, but if you're in the rough, kind of like we saw a lot, it's very difficult. It's difficult to hit it close to the pin. Difficult sometimes, we saw Max Greyersman actually just had to hack out on the hole that he made a quad on. It's up hacking into a bunker, for God's sakes. But, with this place, though, I just mentioned the zoysia grass. It's very easy to hit off that surface. So definitely finding fairways is very key this week because your approach shot will be very much easier hitting from that. But if you're in the rough, though, it's definitely a lot more difficult, especially with the smaller targets. So definitely want to keep the ball in the fairway here. Pretty severe rough penalty, especially the last couple of years. There's a fairly significant risk of incurring a penalty, but it's not as much as what you would think, given how they build this place with how much water they have. But yeah, it's definitely a golf course where you got to hit a lot of fairways. There is a big advantage to keeping the ball in play. Now, bombers, though, they can club down. And we have seen longer hitters do very well here, like Brooks Koepka. He's won here. Dustin Johnson's won a bunch. Bryson even did well for, 61 holes and then completely imploded. But Rory's also done well here. Taylor Moore almost won this thing last year. He's a sprayer. So, it's I think it's probably more important. Obviously, targeting accurate guys at a shorter golf course, it works. But when you're thinking about a longer hitter, and when we go over some of the comp courses, maybe think about if you're a longer hitter, did you do well in some of those places too? Can you be an adult? Like Saad Tagala, longer hitter, kind of a sprayer, but he's done really well here. So, and he's done well at some other comp courses that we are going to talk about. So, that's something to keep in mind here. All right, let's talk about approach play. So, 34th most difficult on the PGA Tour since 2015 out of 93 golf courses. So, definitely above average difficulty. Obviously, you have a lot of water around a lot of greens. That ups the difficulty. You also have small targets, 4,300 square feet. That's actually going to be the third smallest greens they play this year. That's why it's above average difficulty. But again, though, if you're hitting from the fairway, you can get really good contact on the ball. It makes it a little easier. So a little bit counteracting forces there. But it's mostly the water that comes into play with the approach shots and the fact that these are really small targets. That's why it's fairly difficult approach shots. It's not that difficult with your wedges, but it's really difficult from over 150. That seems to be where the big difficulty is here with your shots over 150. Probably part of that has to do with some of your par threes. Number 11 is 165, 170 yards. So that falls in that bucket. A lot of water there. You have a 240 yard, 220 yard or so par 4 or par 3 14th with some water greenside. That's difficult. You have another 175-ish yard par 3 5th, I think, water greenside. So that's probably what's boosting this number right here. But overall, though, still green regulation rate only 60%, significantly lower than the PGA Tour average. So fairly difficult approach shots to have at this golf course. So I want to take one more break, and then we'll go over the rest of this, and then we'll go over course fit tool. We'll go over past results, and then we'll kind of wrap it up with, a couple other things. So we are also brought to you by Rhythm, and football season is here, and the college football and NFL models are now live on Rhythm. Create your own winning betting model or let Rhythm do the heavy lifting for you. You decide what stats matter most to you, and Rhythm builds a custom model around that. Or just let Rhythm and its predictive model do the heavy lifting. Rhythm uses AI projections from MIT data scientists, so you know you can trust them because it's coming from MIT, and those guys are never wrong. Rhythm already has you covered for NFL Week 1 and college football Week 0. So claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm at sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. And we're also brought to you by the Circa Survivor and Circa Millions. Circa Sports is back with Circa Survivor and Circa Millions, giving away $16 million in guaranteed prizes. So imagine the regret you're going to feel, if you win your Office Survivor pool, but you didn't enter the Circa. You're leaving a lot of money on the table. If you don't have your trip booked for Las Vegas yet, before the start of football, the Ultimate Contest weekend is a great time to go out, and you can go out there and actually hang out with Ryan and Sean of Sports Gambling Podcast show and enjoy some of the open bar events at the greatest sports book in the world. It's August 22nd through 24th. They'll be out there. Use promo code SGP15 to save 15% on your hotel room for sign-up weekend. And you can sign up in person at Circa Sports between now and September 7th and use a proxy to play from anywhere. We sign up in person at Circa Sports between now and September 7th. So go to proxy. If you need a proxy, though, go to proxy.footballcontest.com. Save you $50 with promo code golf, SGP. All right. Let's continue here. Let's talk about around the green here. Let's get rid of this. So it is the since 2015, it's the 52nd most difficult golf course for around the green conditions. And if you look at just where it's difficult, let's go here. So slightly above average difficulty from a fairway. That's probably the Bermuda. Chipping off of tight lies of a Bermuda never is easy, but there is opportunity to maybe putt off of it too. So, it's kind of middle of the road, but the rough apparently isn't all that penal trying to get up and down at this place and out of a bunker. That's actually, if you want, that's probably where you want to miss it. If you miss a green, it's in a bunker. So not all that difficult around the green. And then putting is actually very easy here. It's 72nd most difficult out of 93 golf courses. Obviously you got your Bermuda grass here. That makes it very difficult to putt on these greens, but these greens don't have as much undulation as what they saw last week at Sedgefield. Those greens are a lot more difficult to putt. These ones aren't as much. And if you look at, the ranges here, it's 69th most difficult from under 5 feet, 73rd most difficult from 5 to 15 feet, and 66th most difficult from over 15 feet. So last week it was really difficult from like 10 to 15 feet. Not the case this week. These are not very complex greens to putt on, even though they are Bermuda, but you do want to probably target a guy who is more comfortable putting on these putting surfaces, though, the Bermuda. So keep that in mind. All right, let's go over Course Fit Tool. This is Sedgefield, but kind of a similar story of what you saw last week. It's not as extreme with the driving accuracy as what we saw, but here we go. So you're still seeing less of a correlation of longer hitters at this golf course do as well. It's kind of a mixed bag. Obviously there are longer hitters who can do very well, but we've seen the likes of Abe Answer and Daniel Berger, Lucas Glover, shorter hitters who are a little more accurate do well. But it's not as extreme, though, as far as a correlation of being really accurate off the tee. Because, again, guys are clubbing down. There is an opportunity, I think, now with a modern player to be a little more aggressive and not have to worry about spraying the ball miles offline. So, there probably are some water hazards or bunkers that, because of how long these guys hit it, you can kind of take it out of play. But there still is a slightly more higher correlation towards hitting a lot of fairways to success here. About PGA Tour average for approach shots, but still the most predictive measure. So obviously Tiger iron players. This is interesting, though. So last year, when I was actually looking back at last year's column, and I looked at the Course Fit Tool, and there was actually a higher correlation with good putters and good scramblers to this place, And now a year later, it's actually slightly less than the PGA Tour average. Was that just because of Lucas Glover winning last year? Because he's a horrible putter and kind of drove everything back the other way? So maybe something to keep in mind that in 1 year, last year, it was actually benefited you to target guys who are a little better putters and scramblers. This year, it actually is showing it's not as predictive. I don't know. Maybe that's just the Lucas Glover effect. But, a lot of these, if you look at the comp courses, what Sedgefield had versus what this place, a lot of crossover, even though Sedgefield is like 47th on the list here as far as similarities, a lot of golf courses that Sedgefield is similar to this place. So Albany, Sea Island, Hamilton Golf and Country Club, TPC Twin Cities, Royal Troon, Detroit Golf Club, Innisbrook, Port Royal, Concession. A lot of guys who are good at those golf courses tend to be really good at Sedgefield. And even though this course fit model doesn't really fit Sedgefield as much, they cross-reference a lot of golf courses between the two of them. So I would say probably just guys who are pretty good at Sedgefield probably are going to be pretty good at this place too. And if you're looking for guys just who, might not fit the short, accurate mold, if you look at if they're good at these other, sometimes penal golf courses, but shorter, sometimes Bermuda, not the bomber tracks. Like if they're still pretty good at these places, that's probably worth utilizing them here. So that's the course fit tool. Let's go over some past results. So last year, Lucas Glover won in a playoff over Patrick Cantlay, who promptly exited stage rights in the playoff by hitting it in the water in the first playoff hole. But Lucas Glover won in a playoff. Rory McIlroy was a shot back. Tommy Fleetwood, another heartbreak. I bet he's going to be popular this week. He finished a shot back as well. Taylor Moore, who I think was leading heading into Sunday and decided on a 96-degree day to wear all black. That didn't work out too good for him. And I think he ended up actually changing mid-round because that was just a bad idea. What I want to show you, though, is maybe we'll close on this. I don't really have much else to add. I've been talking for a while, but the approach shot distribution chart, I love seeing charts like this because it's very well defined. It's all consecutive yardages as well. So a higher concentration of shots from between 100 and 125 yards, 125 and 150, 150, 175, 175 and 200 than the average PGA Tour event. So just a higher concentration of shots between 100 and 200 yards at this tournament over and over and over. And what's great about that, though, is it doesn't matter. It puts it on a level playing field with shorter and longer hitters. And sometimes when you look at these proximity charts, you look at a longer hitter, they're going to skew a little more shorter on here, and a shorter hitter is going to skew more longer. So maybe you're not focusing on a particular proximity bucket. Well, maybe a guy you like might be hitting a little more from that range. Here, though, it's going to cover everybody. Short hitter, long hitter, they're all going to be hitting a lot of shots between 100 and 200 yards. So, that's really good to look at. Not a lot of shots between, over 200, not a lot of shots from under 100. So if you just focus on guys between 100 and 200 this week, that's your proximity buckets. Just look at that. You're going to capture a vast majority of shots at this tournament. That's really it. That's all I'm going to talk about tonight. It's getting late. 38 minutes, short and sweet. Showed you pretty much everything you need for this place. It's really not all that complicated this week, guys. It's positional golf. It's keep out of the water, hit fairways, good Bermuda putting. That's really about it. So thank you for watching. I'm going to stop sharing the screen now. So thank you for watching this show. Thanks for listening as well. If you haven't done already, please subscribe to our podcast on YouTube. Also subscribe to our podcast on Spotify or Apple or wherever you consume your podcast medium. Go give us a rate and review, by the way. We haven't got one of those. We appreciate it. We work hard trying to give you good information, decent picks sometimes when I'm not telling you that Aaron Rye's bad on Bermuda. Oops. But go give us a review. It always helps us out with that. And go follow us on Twitter. Go follow us on TikTok. Definitely follow on Twitter as well, because our producer Cam handles the Twitter account, and he is red hot with the outrights this year. So if you're looking for good picks, maybe go check him out. So with that, thanks for listening. We will see you on Tuesday night for our betting pick show. Good luck grinding over this tournament.